My name is Charles Trott. I am a visual artist and arts educator, also the founder of DIA. DIA is Diasporic Images of Africa, DIA. We seem to be acronym heavy in this country. So I just jumped on the bandwagon. But at any rate, what DIA does is I identify, include, and redeem Africa's position as the premier civilization and culture bringer to the world. Now that might sound a little egotistical. Well, it's not egotistical because my name is in Africa. But as you know, Africa for quite some time, even now, when you speak of Africa amongst people who, let us say, are obvious African descendants, right? Even some of us, Africa, oh my God, oh, you know, they can't and they won't, you know? But we need to at least understand that, number one, the scientific community, not me, has said that all humanity evolved from the continent of Africa. Yes, we've had other humanoid types, and they came and were in different portions of the world. But Homo sapiens sapien, which we are descendants of, came out of Africa. Look it up. I'm going to move on. The other thing, as an obvious African descendant, I don't care what's on your birth certificate. I don't care what your teachers, your preachers, your mother, or your daddy, or whomever told you you were. In terms of a race, there's only, how many races?
One.
Can't hear you.
One.
So if you're a human, that's the only race there is, the human race. Okay? Now, since this is Women's History Month, as you've seen, you haven't read, you can read at any time up until the end of the month, but those packets right there will give you a little snippet of some of the things that are in the display case. We are, as you see, the title is Women Hear, See, and Write Now. Okay, women, just like men, hear, they see, they make an interpretation of what's going on in their world, and they write about it. This is throughout history. They say poetry began some 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. I don't know. They say in Sumeria. Okay, sounds good to me. What we would call now Sumeria's modern day Iraq. But none of that really matters. We'd like to pay a little bit of homage to Nikki, one of our, when I say our, in the black community, of course, she was one of our queens of poetry and of writing. And because she recently passed, we've also spoken of some other women, which you can read about, and you'll also read about here. Joy Harjo, her connection for me was that she's Muskogee. Now, if you know anything about indigenous Americans, you know Muskogee is the same thing that you will find as a group of them in Mexico, actually it's northeastern Mexico, called the Muskoga. Same people. They're also known as the Creeks. These were all a part of the Trail of Tears, but John Horse and a few others, John Horse, of course, was Seminole. He made a left turn as we were going to Oklahoma. They said, come on, y'all, we ain't going to Oklahoma. So that's how you have this community of Muskogee or Muskoga in Mexico. But I'm gonna stop talking. Let me introduce these ladies right here because they are the poets and the writers that we speak about. So we'll start on this side and move our way over. Your name, please.
Hi, my name is Nicole Fowler. I go by Nikki. I am a visual artist, painter, as well as poet. I I've been using art to heal for maybe 15 plus years at this point. So, hope you enjoy.
Hi, my name is Amira Shabazz Bilal. I am the founder and facilitator of a women's poetry creative group called When Women Speak. We are 200 women strong across the country, internationally, as far away as Italy, as far north as Canada, as far south as Jamaica. And we come together to do presentations such as this, which we are having a few of our members here today to share poetry. I'm also a visual artist, I'm a photographer, and yeah, I'm a writer and author and publisher and all of the above. So at some point today, we're in the library. You might want to take a peek at our When Women Speak anthology, which is on the table. And we also are right on the cusp of publishing our very next anthology, which should be breaking the press sometime this week. And I have, it's a draft copy just to give you a peek at what's coming. And then I have my own anthology of just my work also on the table. And in a few, you'll see a couple of my visual art pieces, because my kind daughter is going to go out to the car and pick them up for me. So welcome and thank you. Thank you for having us, and we're hoping to share some work with you. And we have one more member. She's circling the block looking for a parking space.
Hello, my name is Vanessa. I too am a visual artist, but I do most of my things I do digitally. So I do photography, I do digital art, animation, game development, and a little bit of music dev. I am currently writing a children's book. It's going to be my first children's book. I will be publishing it within a month or two, so I can get a physical copy as well as the digital copy. And I had a publisher reach out to me about a week or two ago, and it was just on Instagram out of the blue. So I was like, God works in mysterious ways. So I'm ready to do that. It's an exciting adventure for me.
And I'm completely out of place, but my name is Felicia Simmons. Most everybody in the room. I've been writing poetry since I was young, before I knew how actually to speak or verbalize myself to the public or outside of my head. I've published stuff as a youth, you go that route. But I learned in my maturing age that I write out of inspiration, not dedication. And I have such respect. But my poetry comes out of moments. And it is how I speak, and now that I'm much more comfortable speaking, right, I have a natural cadence and it just comes out. I sound like a fortune cookie every day.
Okay.
Every day.
All right. What we're going to do is, I'd like to ask the ladies some questions, just a few questions, so that they can sort of explain their connection that their work has and they feel they have to, of course, the African diaspora. But before we start that, how many of you have heard of Phyllis Wheatley? Just raise your hands. Don't be shy. If you haven't heard of Phyllis, it's okay. She's been gone about, what, 300 years? Okay. Some of us know Phyllis. She is the first African-American, black woman, whatever, to be published, a published poet. You can read a little bit about her right there. Also, that's why I give you these. You can read about her in there. Okay? But what we don't hear, and I just bumped into this other lady, is Lucy Terry. Lucy Terry Prince, as a matter of fact. 20 years Phyllis's senior. But they couldn't find any of her work except for one. She is known as a great legal mind and orator because she was living in Vermont. She had some problems with her neighbors. You can imagine what they looked like and what the problem was. But she was able to argue successfully, not once but twice at least, her case against her harassing neighbors. And as usual, the courts and the people who witnessed this case thought they were astounded. okay? She wrote only one poem that could be retrieved. It's called The Bar Fight. It's not a bar like we know. Bar refers to a field, okay? So, anyway, we're all here. Where's your name? Please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Edwina Simmons, and I'm probably joining the team here with Women Speak. Thank you guys for having me.
Speak up, please. Yeah.
I should speak up, I'm sorry. My name is Edwina Simmons, and I'm a poet hailing from, I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and I'm here representing with When Women Speak.
Okay, I'm glad now we're all together. Great. And a quick sidebar. I just met Amira. We were artists doing an art exhibit that we spoke about for Black History Month down in Cuba. And come to find out, and like I said about her, she has many talents, what she already told you. But when I heard that she had a poetry group, I said, there it is. So here we go, all right? We're gonna start with Felicia, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And we'll work our way this way.
You doing all three or just the first question?
Well, one at a
Ask
time.
me. Okay, I'm ready. Go
Let me
ahead.
run this, please.
All right.
How do you feel your work, and it's probably, this is not verbatim, but how do you feel your work relates to the African diaspora?
So, like I said earlier, it was pretty much, I was a little black girl born in around 1980, right? I lived in, born in Long Branch, lived in Asbury, then moved and started school in Neptune. And we were busting, right? We were busting. I was down the hill girl, you know, right off the Ave, right? And we were busting up the Summerfield, up the hill. And the only little brown kids at that time that was pretty much in the school, and this is the 80s, right, was me, right? And of the people that came in on my bus, which was funny. One of the lady here earlier was one of those, right? So it was a different kind of time, and it wasn't. And I was always known as pretty much a busybody know-it-all, right? I was a little odd girl who had a really high IQ, but was pretty much told to sit down and shut up.
Okay, let me stop you just for a minute. Stick to the African diaspora.
All right.
Use
So
the phrase even.
I'm using the phrase.
Okay.
Right. So
Sure.
being of the African diaspora here, and at that time, is, you know, being a little chocolate girl in the 80s was not necessarily popular. The only person that looked like me was Oprah Winfrey and Nell Carter. Off anybody know Nell Carter, right? That was the only person who I can say looked like me, and anyone who spoke like me, there was no one who spoke like me. You know, who read and who was, you know, I was fascinated with Princess Di because we shared the same middle name. So being a little black girl in this world and actually learning to verbalize yourself was a learning process. And that's, you know, it's a short version.
Thank you. Okay.
Right. How my work inspires the African diaspora is I try to tell a story, because I like to tell stories, I like to build characters and world building. I like to make characters that are uplifting. So when it comes to like the black community, majority of the time in the media, it's very negative. Anything you see about us is negative. I want to take the opposite approach and just bring up uplifting ideas. Like, we do have motivation, we do have ambition within our community, and that's what I'm going to be showing within my work.
Okay, so we're talking about being related or connected to the African diaspora, and my work is all speaking, screaming, shouting, DNA, African diaspora, who am I, who are we, and where do we fit in this human fabric piece of quilt? I know growing up, they didn't teach us these things. And I'm kind of older than most people sitting at this table, so I have lived through the civil rights movement of the 60s. The things that you hear about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all those civil rights activists, I lived that. That was a part of my childhood. And I always wondered, like, what was this thing that black people, quote unquote, were experiencing that made us so different than those that were around us? And what was it that we really were trying not to be or to be? My children took great pride in being of Caribbean descent. So they always had a statement of, my family immigrated here during the turn of the centuries. Not understanding or not realizing, even I didn't realize that, well, there was life before the 1900s. So before my family were on that island, they were somewhere else before that. And having that knowledge or growing into that understanding, this is what the African diaspora is. Dropping people that you kidnapped from a continent all over the world, giving various hues, various religions, various ways of being, because we're not one people, we never were. We need to understand that. When they grouped us together, now we are American, and I like to say that I am human before I'm anything else. So I'm going to start with the subclassing. I'm human, and I am a descendant or ascendant of the people of Guinea-Bissau by way of the Caribbean, by way of New Jersey. I have no family in the South because that was our route here, being migrants and immigrants at some point, and collectively a part of that African diaspora. We're all connected by some DNA fabric, and now here we are living together, and hopefully one day harmoniously.
So my work, I guess, includes or displays African dysphoria in regard to or in ways of, one, we are that in and of itself. My story is like so many other stories. Pieces of what you hear that I say or I share, you may be able to resonate with, relate to. And along the way and throughout history, you see, you hear, you know, I know so many women, so many people, places, or going and like seeing and meeting people in places and being in these spaces where their voice is silenced. They feel like they can't speak up. They feel like what they have to say has already been probably said. And I feel as though we should still be shouting everything that we go through from mountaintops, be it positive, be it negative, because history repeats itself, because my story can look like somebody's story 200 years ago, 200 years in the future. I want to share it. I want to say this is all of us. This is my people. You know. I think of how my work relates to the African diaspora. I think of a phrase that I started to say when I first started to write. I was asked to come into a room, and they asked, "Why do you write?" And the only thing that I could think to say was, I speak for Black women with no voices, because at this point I've outlived a lot of the women in my lineage who've come before me. They didn't get to live very long. And from knowing that there was such rich stories behind the tragedy from which I lost them, you know. And I think, when I think of the African diaspora, I think of the fact that, like, we're now doing all of these DNA tests, but a big part of it is where in the world and how in the world can you identify yourself? Can you look into the world someplace far away and, you know, the shape of your face, the shape of your nose, the timbre of your voice, the natural rhythm of the music that you hear, where in the world can it be identified? And I think that there is a rhythm or a sound, something, the way that I project what I've experienced, that someone somewhere can identify themselves and say, okay, this might be the situation which way I was born in, but this won't be the story that I identify myself with in totality. Is bigger than that. And I love to be able to write from my experiences, because I feel like it can draw back a place to say, I've been there, and there is something after there, because so many people's stories end before they get a chance to see the after, and I think that's a tragedy. So to be able to bring their stories and my story as we live it, and the things that I learned as I learned them, to poems, and hopefully that you know, that resonates with somebody who needs to find themselves somewhere in the world, because that's what I needed when I started to write.
Because I'm a narrative poet. So
Oh, you a preacher.
I'm sorry.
Lord.
I'm trying to cut it down.
Okay, I tell you what. No, I'm only doing this because I'm trying to keep time.
Yeah.
And as you know, we still have 2 other questions, but they weren't as important as I wanted our guests to get a feeling and a taste for what you do. You can see some of Amira's photographic work. You will see and read her written work, but I figured I could get a shorty, but since she's a preacher, I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what.
I'm short,
I'll do
so.
one
Okay.
for the evening, and then that will balance out me being a longer
All right,
speaking
whatever you want to do,
person.
but I wanted them, each of you to, no, wait a minute. That's
I don't do
Okay, that's why I said it that way. She's the writer of children's books, so we're going to exclude her. But the other lady, they're the poets. So whoever would like to go first, we'll. Whoever wants to go, y'all work it out.
All right, I found the short one.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll start. I'll break my thing here. All right, so I was reading a poem by a young brother, and I decided to make my own version of it. And it was called 20 Things to Call a Black Boy, right? So I came up with, well, I think theirs was 10 things to call a black boy, and mine is 20 things to call a black boy, because I'm a black boy's mother. 20 things to call a black boy from a mother's heart. 1, human. 2, rival to the heat of a summer evening. 3, firstborn of this land we stand on. 4, cold waiting for that fire wind in its back, he's a runner. 5, guilty before they even ask his name. 6, antagonist to every protagonist's story. 7, monster till you prove I'm wrong. 8, gone like the wind took you. 9, target soon to be martyred. 10, slipping away, gone. 11, gods with spades wearing black cloth, black face. 12, sold to a grieving powered line sneaker. 13, grief of a mother's heart. 14, bold, dark coral that shines anyway. He's onyx. 15, I thought about leaving this one blank, but who am I to call my sons nothing? 16, a prayer that learned to fight back and run fast. 17, mama's joy in the breath she holds tight. 18, prayer at night waiting for God to answer. 19, a heartbeat, a heartbeat, a heartbeat. You can call him brother Yaaki, Omokurinda, Nawanoki, V, Muata, Indadana, Unyana, Ibn, my son. 20, call him son. Home.
Wow.
Okay, I'm supposed to go after that, right?
Yes.
Alrighty, this one I did my TED talk, but you can go online and see that one. This one that's been strolling around in my head for a little bit. I'll say the name after it's finished. It's quicker than yours. I write out inspiration, dedication. I hold on to it. It's a thought or a feeling. I may have been in denial, may have been in mourning for a while, but the love of my life is gone, and sometimes I feel like this bishop's pawn. See, the lost of you cut so deep, watching the black and blue bleed into the sea, but without you, who do I be? See, I'm old school down the hill like Smitty's and Miss Daisy's. When there was a Miss Ida that boogied on down, and there was Furman was our queen that didn't need a crown. When my grandmother who lived in Bradley cells, selling loose cigarettes and dollar bears. Without that, who do I be? See, sometimes I hear the echo of you in the talk. What's good, queen? Right? Or the ghost of you in the wall. Without that, who do I be when no one knows my true attribute is Muffy? See, I may have been in denial, may have been in mourning for a while, but the love of my life is almost gone. And sometimes I feel like this bishop's pawn. See, the loss of you cuts so deep, because that was my black and blue that bled here in these streets. Without you, who do I be when there's nobody left that knows that my true attribute is Muffy? See, some might call me Miss Simmons. Some might call me Mom or Auntie. But I truly know who I be. I be Felicia D., otherwise known as Muffy, from the Lost Tribe of AP.
Wow.
Guess I'll go ahead. My mother doesn't know how beautiful I think she is. How I view her as art. Partly because I never told her, partly because I never learned how to until recently. Going back and forth with myself internally, like, how do I get her to see? How do I get her to understand that at the time I needed her, she was a wreckage of a mother, but now is a masterpiece of a being? How do I get my inner child to understand that me, accepting her in the now, could be so free? Tell this artist's mind that not all art is aesthetically pleasing. Some art can look broken until you allow yourself to see it as whole. Taught myself not to view from the surface, but from my soul. She, the mosaic I'd hang on my wall. The mosaic, when touched, I used to cut myself on. Shards of her mistakes embedding themselves into me, making me believe she was who I had to be. How do I tell her that she's the work of art that I'm glad she taught me not to be, that she's the one and only exhibit that I've traveled lifetimes to see. I've traveled my lifetimes to see such beauty. Mom, Queen, this affirmation is long overdue. You are beautiful. I love you.
Amen.
This poem is called The Thrones of Lesser Houses. I'm sitting in a chair. The arms are sticky from too much touch. There are grooves worn in from too many panicked fingers. The fabric bindings of this chair barely hold it together. Its synthetic fibers itchy and obstinate against my skin. The goose pimples won't go down. I will them to. They tell me they are at war with the chair for the prime real estate that is my last nerve. It is cold. I pray the numbness is hypothermia. I pray I freeze. I pray to one day be thawed by an evolved species capable of cheating death, or at least sparing me the duty of requirements and crises I feel ill-equipped for. This chair is exactly 2 squares forward and 4 squares left to the pebbly floor from this chair to her hand, to her bedside, 1 stride diagonal I count. The 3 silent sisters are praying, remembrance of my mother's soul stretching awake, throwing frozen tears. For a second, my bitterness sees their eyes sewn close with linen and covered in painted onions. Eyeballs protruding from their hands, and their prayers sound like I told you souls, calling her the nicknames of girlhood, nicknames they took away, deciding they didn't suit her lifestyle. She wanted to be called Diamond. I silently scream, a ball of words I can't spit out make it hard to breathe. I want to be angry, but my cowardice becomes kerosene, and I pray they open a window and let me out with the other toxic fumes. A hospital bed is no place for fiery deaths. There are 6 in the room. I wonder why it seems we were each praying to God for different things. I pace my breath in 9-second expansions in each direction on both of our behalves. My mother breathes more erratically now, and I wonder how doctors so accurately predict death but won't fix it. The chair groans almost in agreement, and the ball of spit in my throat gets jealous. 9 times the rise and fall of her chest pauses every time I scream. Each time, evidence of my inability to learn lessons, evidence of my inability to show up readied and reticent to the duty of survivor. I am 20 years old. It is the 20th day of the 2nd month of the year 2002. Synchronicity making me aware that death is in the room. It is time. No one says to me, but I somehow know with the punctuation of a hand on my shoulder. One I wish could hold me steady. I'm not ready. This moment. This is where the cataclysm commenced. The changing of the cruel guards, the light in my mother's eyes have been replaced by fear. We look in each other's eyes for every 24 seconds, searching for someone mature enough to convince us it's going to be okay, finding an extension of the fear and looking away. This year is 12 steps to the door of our room, 1 square forward. I will someone send rescue, prayers go ignored. For a moment, I look forward to later, and my heart behaves erratically at the implications. I see myself make the steps to my mother's bedside, hold her thin, darkened fingers, lift her body and run from the room, taking her to the witch doctor healer with my thin wrist as offering, taking her to the river for one last attempt at baptism, taking her to the park will be 2 fire signs sharing quiet time amid the comforts of the burning like we used to, but my feet won't move. I watch and listen for 369 scenarios of heroic ways this night could go, but my feet won't move. So I sit in a chair with my fingers in the throne claimed by a dynasty of daughters dealing with death and fighting the urge to be the one they call deserter.
All right, I was going to ask them about time. What time period do they seem to gravitate to? And well, I might still ask that, but they've already given me a mouthful, so I don't know. Maybe I'll put that one aside. But one thing for me I've also heard is I feel there's a lot of Sankofa going on. Okay? You are reaching back to the past. You're dealing with it in a present context. And certainly all of this prepares us all, especially you, for the future. I don't know, it's just my interpretation. Let me ask you this last question, and the one I tried to throw in there for the last minute. I think I even forgot it. Oh, yeah. How could I forget this? Given the time that we are in now, it is 2025. We have a new president. We have a new cabinet. How important do you feel your work is in this particular moment as we move forward? We can start anywhere, anyone can answer.
I've always believed that you can look back as old as the Bible, and I feel like the poets, the griots, the storytellers have always been the ones to write the history of the day. It's from their perspective, and their creation births a certain narrative, that we feed off of, but we are writing the history of today as it relates to our experience, and I think that's important for every poet,
I actually agree, piggybacking off of what she's saying. I feel that it's ever so important for all of our work, or my work and other Black and brown artists' work, to continue forward, especially during these times. It's very prevalent because, one, we have someone who's trying to make sure our history gets erased or not talked about, hidden away, so that we can forget, and we shouldn't be in a space where we should ever forget. And I believe just sharing and reliving, and like she said, like being the storytellers and being the marker of what's happening in the present moment, leaving a mark on what's happening right now, 2025, 2024, 2023, 2022, we were here. This happened. Going forward, this is what was going on. Or we can look at it like, oh, no, so maybe we can try something different. But I just think that it's ever important.
Well, as my two peers have said, we are griots. So our job is to tell the story of history of now, and hopefully help people to propel themselves into the future. The weapon of a poet is always their words, their words, their words. And one of the things that I encourage our poets, our group, to do is to be published. And I find myself saying to them always that even after we're gone, Those words on those pages will outlive us. They will touch somebody. They will help somebody understand who we really are. And the other most important thing about a poet and a poet's work is we are telling our stories. We get to say what the narrative is. We get to tell our truths. You cannot rely on other people, no matter who they may be, to tell you who you are and what you should be. This is the job of a poet. Through the oratory works that we've given, through the stories that we get from our grandparents and we take into our hearts and we pass on to our children, we spew out into the environment. I myself as a teacher for 20-something years, every day in the classroom, if they didn't have that support at home, it was given from me. We shared our lives, we shared our stories, and it is very, very important. In fact, we can't leave home without this.
To go off of what they said, we all have our own perspectives, so I think it's good that we all have our own written things. We all come from different generations, so generationally we will view things differently. So I feel like that would be beneficial for the future. So we write what we went through now, and we carry that on to see what happens within the 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, so on. So what we experience now, we will learn from it, we will write about it, and then we can redirect it for the new generation.
I think for now in history and the importance of now, I'm a fan of history, right? Because history is horizontal, it is not vertical, right? So we live it. And when I learned as a child, we were talking about earlier about getting the vibration, right? Science class and God, right? And when you speak a word out of your mouth, the vibrations of your mouth and the words that you form changes the environment. And in 2nd, 3rd grade, you learn about the butterfly effect. And the butterfly, might start a hurricane across the world, or a ripple in the pond, a rock in the pond might start a typhoon, because everything is tied together. So I'm always been spoken because I'm dyslexic. So early on, right, they were like, oh, she's so brilliant, but it didn't translate because I couldn't get it out written. Right, and then I was put in a space where I couldn't speak it, right? So I was trapped, right? It gets trapped in my brain sometimes over and over again. But being able to speak it out and having the boldness to speak it out and speaking in this time, that's why I would never be silenced by anybody, right? I've learned, and this is a life, right? I have more fight than I have flight. And in that space, we need to know that. We need to have fight in our space to remember where we were, because that's exactly where we still are. And we'll be unless we make conscious changes to do something different. And it can start from a little old person like me, right? And I think I get bold to people who be like, I don't know how she do the stuff they do. I can say only but God, right? Because that gives that bold, because, I used to shake. Right? When I used to speak, I used to tremor. I still do a little bit, right? But I'm compelled to get out there and say and do, right? So that's how I think that we can affect right now in the climate of having forgetting, right? Or being pushed to forget, right? But especially Black in this country, right? I trace my line back in the Carolinas since before. We can go back to about 1700. Right? We've always been here. We've always been Black here. And so just knowing that and then pushing that to the future, my aspect of the diaspora. So that's how it's relevant for today. And again, I could talk a lot, but I won't.
Diaspora comes in a couple of, well, at least 2 different ways that I have learned. Of course, starting in Africa, but also when we talk about the indigenous Americans, many of you would talk about them as Native Americans. I don't like that term, so I will say indigenous, because it tells the time. And history is about time. Time. Humanity goes back how many? Hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions, okay? And this, you mentioned our story. Our story, it's not just ours as Black people. You got brown, red, yellow, white, probably some other color I haven't named. As long as you're people, you're on this planet, it is our story. As obvious African descendants, because remember, everybody in here, you're African descendant too. I don't care what they told you. But as black people, African Americans, obvious African descendants, we've been trying to be erased for how long? Since we got here. What did they say, 1619? Nah! Started around 1500. Still at it. So let's see how well, let's see how well this bunch does. But at any rate, I'm appreciative of the ladies coming out. The folks, when you come in, you seldom get a chance to really look at and digest the artwork. Of course, we as visual artists like to sell our work, but more importantly, it's the theme. I just want to point to one piece over here, because now I'm talking, but I'm not going to talk long. See that orange, red, yellow, violet piece? You see those 4 images? The one on the left in West Africa, it's right here in the showcase. It's called the Quabadal. The one up top, okay, is from the Hopi tribe or nation. It is like the Aquaba. It is about fertility. All of these symbols are about fertility, life. Some say the Ankh is a representation of the female's reproductive system. The cowrie shells, also fertility. All right, oh, sorry, the Kachina, the Hopi, and some of the other Southwest indigenous people use Kachina dolls as well. Some of the photos that Sister Amira has brought in, I recognize as being from Cuba, but from other places, from here, you know. These women, the power of the word, whether you're doing poetry or you're acting, words have power. And conversely, silence has power too. Okay? But it's much more entertaining, educating when I hear it in the form of poetry or music. Don't take it for granted. You know, y'all know that music. They start singing about their love and the whole thing. And, you know, whether it's blues, jazz, R&B, doesn't matter. They're lyrics. Words, the power of words. How are we doing with time? 6:54. 6:54? Any questions? Because I always, now come on, wait, hey, I see you sleeping back there. Don't let me take my shoe off. Yeah, you, I'm talking you, Mr. Norman. No, any questions or comments, please? Nada?
Can you talk a little more about your children's book?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Children's book.
Oh, who's
Yeah, so the book is about a child who's, being restless, and it's about the mother. She needs the virtue of patience, dealing with the child who's not going to sleep. So I used that story to work around the scripture of one of the spiritual gifts that we are gifted. And so that's what that's about. Like, I'm still fleshing it out. I like have the written part of it, so I'm gonna go back home and finish that up. But that's the basics of what it's about.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Now is the time. And I see, yes.
So I'm also a poet and storyteller and co-sign, like everything all of you said, so thank you so much for sharing all of your words, whether poetic or not. And also descendant of genocide survivors, also use my writing as a therapeutic healing form of creative expression. And I'm curious, for any of you who want to answer, how you balance writing about joy and writing about pain. Do you go through seasons, right? Is it just what inspires you to get out in the moment of what you're going through? Is it something you can write more joyously or joyfully after you've gone through something? Is there even an awareness, but is there a balance for you? Because, right, they kind of coexist and contrast each other and each play their own role and make for a lovely song too, right?
I can answer mine quickly because I write out of inspiration, not dedication. My pieces are alive. I was telling Mr. Trout earlier. It might mull around in my head 1,000 times until I either speak it or I write it down. But if I do it without writing it down or catching it, it's gone, right? Because it's for that moment, right? And there's prayers that I say or write. It is the transition. It could be a joyful moment. It can be a pain that's pulling at me. Right, but it has to be said. It's compelled and it's inside and it breaks out. And so mine, again, I told him earlier, I write out inspiration, not dedication. I don't sit there, today I'm writing like y'all. I don't do it, right? It's something that just comes out. I can write every day for a month or not write for a year.
Yeah, I'm not thinking that anybody, well, I don't. I'm definitely emotional. I'm definitely, if you show me something that I need to see, that's going to be a whole poem. It's going to be about a day long. And I'm going to have a beginning, a peak, and a decline. And by the time it's done, somebody in the audience is going to be saying, hallelujah, yeah, I lived that too. I'm a narrative poet. I tell stories. And my stories come from the interactions with other humans. And I don't have many love poems. And the reason that I don't have love poems, many, is, as my friend says, anybody got time for love poems? Because there's so much out in the world that I need to grasp, talk about, digest, and spew out in a way that people get to understand the relevance and the importance of what we are doing to other human beings. So each and every poem that I have is going to strike somebody's emotion. And I was told at one poetry reading, my last poem talked about one of my nephews who was gunned down. That was the last poem in the set. And so there were like no dry eyes. And one lady came to me, she says, honey, the next time you perform, don't end with that poem. No, because it was really emotional. So I understood, but then I have to write what I feel. If I'm not writing what I'm feeling, you guys are not going to feel it. So when I'm reading, it's from that emotion. It's from me taking myself back to that point in time and expressing what I felt, because I know somebody else out there has gone through that and may not be able to speak it the way that poets do.
Thank you.
I think there is a sort of redemption in telling a story just as it is. You don't always have to, close out, and because a lot of the poetry that I've written comes from a place of this idea that either when you experience something, it's only a tragedy if you didn't learn something from it. So sometimes the lesson is for the listener to learn. So sometimes you don't have to necessarily write that in. You see the idea through to the end, but I don't feel like I stopped giving this place where I needed to find, to feel like I'm leaving someone out on the bleeding edge, because every negative experience bears a positive one if you can learn from it. And sometimes, it's a responsible thing to leave that space for that lesson. Sometimes, you go too far and you're like, there is, you have to show the way to a place of redeeming, but you can't always have that ending for someone else in reality. So to feel responsible for always writing it seems like you're taking away the opportunity from the person that's listening to what you're writing about. So yeah, life in itself, there's a duality. So sometimes you swing this way and sometimes you swing that way, but honestly telling the experience from where it is and being as honest to that as possible takes away the responsibility of feeling like you need to feel it for another person,
I love that you said that, like piggybacking off of, I guess, the both of them. I too am emotional. And I feel a lot of feels and think a lot of thoughts when I'm driving. I love driving. I love just being in open road spaces. And when I'm reflecting on just my life or others, if I hear stories, or I am in the mental health, behavioral health field, so I'm a counselor, if I'm talking to individuals, coming from work, kind of decompressing to unpack. On the way home, I'm kind of releasing those emotions and those thoughts and things. And at times, many times, especially if it's more so my life, a lot of poems come up, or a lot of thoughts, or a lot of lines for poems will come up. So I literally pull over and like I'll write it out, and I'll just write the raw emotion, be it positive, negative. There used to be an older version of me that, especially if it was negative, because I had a series of very long and negative poems for a very long time, where I would hold on to them or sit with it, like I'll write it all out, even when it was negative, and try to come back to it from a logical standpoint to try to create beauty from it. But then I recognize, because I have some poems that I enjoy doing that, but I really like the raw emotion in the moment, just to keep the story natural and going. So yeah. Right? I say if you can't feel it, you can't heal it. So feel your feels.
But there are different genres. Like every poet has a different way. You've heard all of us, and we're not the same. We're coming from different angles, and some people just like to write poems that make you smile, and flowers and trees and comedy. I just don't happen to be that person. I'm going to tell you about somebody's life, mostly mine.
Okay, that's, well, you know, I mean, you say you're emotional, and you ladies always get tagged with that. Oh, they so emotional. Oh, men don't have no emotions, huh? Oh, men can't cry, huh? Oh, you old punk, you old sissy. Hey, if we weren't supposed to cry, we wouldn't have tear ducts. It's not about sissy. It's not about any of that. Okay, it's about, and as a matter of fact, that's part of our problem as men in general. We have been trained not to feel, not to respond. You know, that type of thing. We will live on, and a lot of what we're told, and a lot of what we're trained to be, is going to have to be shedded. Or we're going to have a very, very difficult time living these next few years. Okay? I want to just say one thing. For me, I remember the term diaspora, and I associated it with Holocaust. I first heard those terms, probably in high school, you know. But they seem to be, because no one seemed to use it. As I grew up to this old rascal you're looking at now, I said, you know, there have been many Holocausts. Diaspora, that means a people leaving from a traditional geographic area and moving out, moving away. So everyone has a diasporic story. You Irish, you got one. You Scottish, you got one. Greek, please, we got Greeks in America, where else we got them? French, whomever. Okay, so, but I don't think, generally again, that we as Americans understand what we say many times, and certainly what is said to us. We don't think about it. We're the worst in terms of using this English language. But that's enough for me. I'm glad. Please, anyone else, quickly. Comments, questions? Please don't be shy. No, you can't talk. Of course you can talk.
No, I just want to say thank you very much. It was really beautiful.
You're welcome.
All of your, everything that you guys offered to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I admire you because I don't feel like I'm a poet, you know, to get those words out. So thank you. And everyone had something that touched me.
So there was this book that I wrote a long time ago. It was literally a collection of crumpled napkins and papers and notebooks and just things, poetic expressions I thought would never see the light of day. And then one day, you know, my influence, like Sister Amira and others, they're like publish it, put it out there so someone can relate to it. So I had the courage to do it. And this is just within the past few years, and it's really saved my life. Not for the point of trying to be any sort of image, but to find an outlet for what you feel and to put it down on paper. Because sometimes you can go back and look at 3 lines and you will see a whole universe of what you were experiencing at that time. And that is important, just to have a place where you can identify yourself. I think that's the importance of thinking about the diaspora. Where do you identify yourself in this world? Do you identify it in your words, in the way you speak, your relationships with people? I think we all need someplace special where we can just put that. So, you know, I wish I would have never undermined the things that I was doing and how important it was to me, feeling as though it needed to be something grandiose for someone else. So just collect it, I would say. I encourage everybody that I meet who feels like they have any type of poetic inkling. If that might be your thing, even if you never share it with anyone else, it's a great outlet at any
Well,
point.
like this is one of the things that When Women Speak is quite famous for. We have people who have never, ever, ever thought of being a poet or writing or presenting their work in front of anybody. They're in the group. And they sit at the performances, and at the end, sometimes Navy will get up. I'm ready now. So-and-so will get up. I'm ready now. We just finished a retreat in Cuba with writers. And there was one girl who never wrote anything. She just, my cousin, she just came along because she wanted to go to Cuba. When she got finished though, she wrote 3 short poems. And what I read in her work was she was waiting for a moment where she could feel she fit in. And sitting and looking and listening to the poets that she was with, she thinks she found it. She's published. So you can be a part of When Women Speak. We welcome you.
I want to say thank y'all ladies. All right, gonna be real quick. I want to say thank y'all ladies because what y'all have for me, I've been, a friend asked me to write something, so I've been playing with like a little article. But another friend literally quotes me and then just writes down stuff that I say to send it back to me later. And I was against, like, I don't need this, but I'm gonna write some stuff down and I might put it in a book. I don't say now, I don't got the time. But it is. I'll pull up all my notebooks that I have stored around the house.
Well, you're welcome to submit to the anthology. There's open calls all the time. You just submit one poem and you're in.
All right, if there is,
There's a question.
pardon.
Question I can't remember.
Amira.
I see you had some books when you came inside, and as a visitor, I was just thinking to myself, do you deal with childhood trauma, like individuals that go through?
And is that my profession?
Yeah, what dealing with poetry?
Within my poetry, do I have poems? In Breathing Through Concrete, just from the name, can't you tell?
Right.
All right, so that not only deals with the trauma that children have, it's the trauma that families have, it's the trauma that parents suffer, even if they may be the cause of the broken child. So Breathing Through Concrete are several stories like that. And what they are compilations of different people's stories into one poem. So you're thinking you're reading about one character, but you're really reading about 5 or 6 who had similar experiences. And look, this is a poem now from the girl whose mother left her at the school, never came back for her. From the girl whose mother was standing on top of a car, calling her name through the window at her school, embarrassing her because the mother was on drugs. To the children that the protective services came to the school and extracted them from the school and drove them off in a black limousine, never to be seen again. So their classmates are traumatized. I'm sure they're traumatized. And the fact that their mother showed up at the school every day, she's traumatized. So to answer your question, I hope I did. See, I told you I talk a lot. Yeah, that's Breathing Through Concrete.
Okay, I'd just like to close with one of the quotes that you'll find in the packet. This quote is by Maxine Howell Kingston. She who's in here too. I'm just going to read it to you very brief. In the Chinese culture, to tell a story is to pass on knowledge, wisdom, and history. It is to talk of all things. The quote reflects the importance of storytelling in her heritage, which plays a central role in her works, such as the Woman Warrior. So, when you look through these, okay, whenever you do, you'll see I have quite a selection of different cultures, races, the whole thing. You don't know if there's only one race. No, I know. Well, I'm still affected by this myself. Talk about trauma. Look at me. You know how long? You got light in your family? Why? Because I'm light skinned? Come on. So, but indeed, I bring these things up because we are still a product. We're all a product. You know, no matter how we feel about it. And until we can really put it to rest, it will always affect us. So, I thank the ladies of Women Speak for coming out. And I thank my other two ladies for coming, my local ladies. And, you know what I'm saying?
I know it's